Hey everybody, this is Dark Guards, and we're back on another video. So I've been working on the radiation system some more the last little bit of time here. I spent the entire morning doing research, kind of looking into all kinds of things related to radiation, looking at different things. Found some really cool reports done about different incidents that happen inside reactors and various things. There, for example, is a report we're talking about just the spent fuel casings. You know, the fuel after it's been consumed gets down to a point where it's technically not usable for as a reactor fuel, but it's still hot. And we're talking about how that fuel by itself, just sitting in the bottom of a pool of water, that if the pool of water drained too much, it would produce so much radiation it would kill a person within 20 seconds. Kind of really fascinating stuff when it comes to designing this mod here, because it lets me know that when I'm actually building up the values for these radiation items and stuff, that I actually can use really high values and actually match realistic perspective and kind of stuff on that. Now, unfortunately, because this is Minecraft, we're never going to have actual realism when it comes to radiation, simply because gameplay and realism don't go hand in hand. But what have done is I have made changes to how much radiation the items do produce. So the items now produce a lot more radiation. So this now produces about 6 rims a second, so that'll kind of kill you pretty quickly. We can tell it's in the range, of course, just like last time. If you get away from it, it goes away pretty quickly. I'm wearing protective armor, which is protecting me, so I can pick this up and the radiation will go away. I have improved a little bit of the performance of the thread, so the thread is running just a little faster. I found out that the print lines I was using for debug were actually slowing it down, and if I actually get rid of all of the debug, because if you can actually tell, I do have some debug down here still, I get rid of all of that, this actually will run a lot better and get a lot better performance after all. Now, one of the other changes I have done is I actually have finally got the reactor producing radiation. So we can see we got the multi-block reactor core here. So this, for those who don't really know the old mod, the reactor core is designed to be the housing for the radioactive material. And it's designed to kind of initiate the process. So theoretically, in real life, how this would work is you'd be sticking this rod inside of a graphene block, and that graphene would be allowing the neutrons to slow down just enough so that way when they hit the next rod, they chain react and everything else, and you start producing a lot more neutrons and producing a lot of heat and everything else. Now, because this is Minecraft and we kind of want to have that gameplay advantage and actually end up with something that looks kind of cool and plays kind of cool, we are only using single rods here, and theoretically the ideal is that this little rod here pre-contains the graphene, and I'm going to make the recipe reflect this. So it'll contain the graphene, it'll contain everything else, and then there's just a process that initiates it that will allow that rod to start reacting. And then this actually ends up technically being, when it comes to the rod core, is the rod core would just be your control mechanism to kind of activate it and deactivate the rod, and it will also kind of work to house like contaminants and everything else, because with this you can drain the contaminants out here. But the reactor does actually work now. And look how much radiation that produces. So this produces an extremely high amount of radiation we're running. Right now I think I've got it set to be about 100 times more radiation being produced when the reactor is active versus inactive. Right now there's no actual boolean to turn it off and on, but so theoretically we got the fuel rod here, so let's go ahead and pull this out. Go pull this all out. So we've got the fuel rod here, so you know this produces basically 6 when it's running. If we let it run real quick. So that's about 6. Now this over here produces a significant amount more. And this has to do with the fact that this is actually actively running. And this also decays over distance. I've got it set to a hard distance of 50 meters. So once you get it far enough away, you'll notice it'll just jump straight down to 0. So if we keep backing up. See right here to 0. And then 24 here. This is done for performance reasons, because if I let it go out to max distance, if the radiation gets too high, you will literally run out of RAM. I left this run at 32,000 meters. 1, I just crashed the game flat out because I tried to load chunks and that weren't in existence. 2, when it was loading chunks, it was consuming massive amount of RAM. So it does have a hard limit. That hard limit will be customizable via config, so you guys can change that to be whatever you want. It is programmed to not load chunks as well. So if it gets to a point where it needs to load a chunk, it just will ignore that chunk. This will cause some problems when it comes to radiation overlap. So you may have some chunks that have no radiation, some that do. It's nothing I can really do about that. It will take too much time to fix that issue versus just letting it go. So I do have it set low enough so that way, as long as it is in chunk load distance, it will actually load and generate radiation. So if you respawn inside your base or so on and so on, do that stuff. Now I still got to do a little bit more work with how this works, so there still is the plan to do some ray tracing so that way you can actually put some walls in between you and the reactor to stop the radiation. But the moment this will work, so while this is running, it'll produce a huge amount of radiation. I think each one of these cores is producing, if we can go ahead and empty all of these out. So, and put one of them in. So right now each of the cores is producing about 500, and of course if you have more than one core running, which there is an efficiency bonus with having more than one core running, these will actually start to get like huge amounts of radiation value. Now at the moment, how that radiation is set up right now, if you were standing next to us without a radiation suit, you would instantaneously die. 1,000 radiation is going to be the cutoff point. I'm probably going to actually change this because I have been doing a lot of reading into how radiation affects the human body and affects different animals and creatures, and have found that the 1,000 limit I was using was kind of the indication that if you're exposed to 1,000 rims per second, that's when you're going to die within a couple minutes. So technically the body can handle much higher, so we're going to probably take this to maybe like 10,000 would be a better cutoff limit. Because the ideal is it's absorbed energy you're getting absorbed to, and how this works is that the more energy you absorb from radiation, the more damage your body takes, and the more health you effectively lose. But unlike actual health, where you're kind of like losing blood or stuff like that, this is kind of preventing your body from functioning flat out, and will eventually kill you. That's about all I've got to show here, just kind of some minor changes to how the radiation items are working, the map's running speed-wise. And this actually does run pretty fast. For those who actually are interested, if we scroll down, I can actually show the runtime of this. Although this is detecting changes in the item, so let me actually pick the item up itself so we can get a little bit nicer read time. So if we get this opened up, we can actually do this right here. So that was a 300 radiation change at 50 meters was its limit. That took 620 milliseconds. That's pretty fast when you consider the fact that this is running on a 50 by 50 by 50, so 50 by 50, let's actually do the math here, so 50 times 50 times 50, that's 125,000 blocks that iterated over in 620 seconds. This time will actually go up when I put the ray trace in there, but that's pretty fast when you really think about it. And if we actually do the reactor version is also locked at 50 meters. And we go down here, that one took, actually took less, even though there was actually more radiation. It kind of varies how long this will actually take. It depends on how much it has to actually do work-wise. And of course, there is a little bit more work I got to do on the radiation items, everything else, and of course the entities and everything. But I'll go ahead and leave you here, and I'll come back with more progress updates and content and everything else.